Welcome to the Corporate Venturing Insider Series, where I interview top practitioners in the CVC world and learn with you the best practices and golden nuggets that they have accumulated over their career. This week, we are recording from GCV in Monterey, where we will be learning from Jenna, Vice President of Startup Partnerships at Comcast and Head of Comcast NBCU SportsTech, Comcast's Accelerator program. Jenna, welcome.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be with you.
First, what's your journey into corporate venturing?
Yes, it was a long journey because actually I was more in business development, sales, managing partnerships, came from Silicon Graphics, and then made a shift in my career going from silicon chips and communication to working for a media company. And I ran track and cross country for Baylor University, so sports was always my love. I wanted to get out of semiconductors and into something a little more exciting, and that is definitely sports. So I've now been at Comcast for 11 years, and in 2020, we stood up the Comcast NBCU SportsTech program. And it is really intended for us to invest in 10 startups each year to really push us beyond the status quo in our sports products, fan experiences that we can create. And I think we've created an opportunity for founders to come in and not just innovate across Comcast and NBCU and Sky. If you look at us as a company, we have deep roots in sports, whether it's we own the Wells Fargo Center, we own the Philadelphia Flyers. So very focused on making sure that product on the ice is the best that it can be. But then we also reach 30 million homes from a broadband perspective, and Peacock has the most live sports rights. And even in the play sector with it, the standpoint of sports engine. And we know that kids who play are fans for life. So this program is really designed to bring value across the board in our organization.
Very nice. So for the audience who are outside the US, can you actually explain what is Comcast, what is the business model, and why sport is so important to Comcast?
So I'll break it up into three parts. So Comcast, our high-speed internet data, it's at the root, I would say, of our company there. But we're also a cable provider as well. So in your home, you have internet coming in, and being able to manage that is a huge thing. Yep. We're also very proud of X1. It is probably the best way to experience entertainment in any form in the living room. You can pick up the voice remote and say women's floor exercises, and during the 17 days of the Olympics, it'll drop you right into those moments. I would say from a revenue standpoint, Comcast is probably the larger revenue driver. And then if you look at NBC, where they're storytellers from a news standpoint, from a sports standpoint as well, we have Universal theme parks and a huge portfolio on the cable side of the business. And then Sky was a more recent acquisition that we did and really gave us that international reach. And I think altogether, think of us as right at that intersection of media and entertainment. And I get to live in that sliver of sports where live only happens once. And it is truly the moments that bring us together.
Yeah, it's a special moment where you are together enjoying life. So this is clearly a very important element of Comcast. But I want to go through your journey, and you mentioned your media and peer experience. And there's something very interesting because corporate VCs are always challenged. Financial value, strategic value. Financial value is very tangible, very easy to calculate. Strategic value is more intangible, and yet potentially this is a more important part. If we think about media and marketing, you have the tangible, and then you have the intangible, which actually probably matters even more. How does your experience in media helps you today driving the right goals?
For us, our North Star and the value that we provide to the companies that we invest in is we have line of sight of how we're going to test and pilot that technology. And we have gone through a rigorous selection process to arrive at the 10. We had 1,500 companies apply this last time. So arriving at those 10 companies, and we can talk through that selections process, but it is truly layers of due diligence across all the different business units of the company.
Wow. Okay. So let's talk about the selection process.
Yeah.
1,500 coming in. That's a lot to review.
Yes.
How big is your team to review
Yes.
and how do you select?
Well, I should set a little bit of context because one of the unique differentiations of our program is that, yes, you could have just played with the sports assets and portfolio that we have as a company and provided immense value, but we wanted to make it bigger. And so we accomplished that by bringing in external sports partners. And it's all built off of who also has that entrepreneurial, innovative mindset, but where do we have media rights and sponsorship investments? So we've already invested the money there. Let's have that shared sort of intention of bringing in more fans, more ticketing revenue, all of those things that drive that. So we brought in NASCAR and talk about an innovative, they are willing to disrupt themselves across the board.
Yep.
Premier League is another really important partnership for us. Another is WWE. Again, it is a fan base unlike any other. Very loyal fan base, very loyal. And then PGA Tour. You're not going to have a 24/7 dedicated cable channel to golf and not have a deep relationship there. And then we have 3 Olympic teams, U.S. ski and snowboard, swimming and cycling. So those are our partners that are invested and putting in the sweat equity to help us choose these companies. So going back to your original question, 1,500 applicants. We have a really strategic partnership with Boomtown. They are an innovation operator, if you will.
Okay.
So they will stand up custom bespoke accelerator programs on behalf of companies like us. And they are a fantastic partner because they are small and nimble and entrepreneurial. And you need that to really make it work within a large organization like us. So we co-invest together. Our deal flow team, it's Boomtown employees that are really dialed into what are the innovation needs and priorities of us and all of our partners in the consortium. I work hand in hand with them to do those first round interviews, get us to the top 50, and then that's when all of the sports partners start to weigh in. And so we have a 3-week period where they have access to scoring and reviewing the companies at their own pace. It's everything from investment decks to team videos, product demos, all of that in a very concise way for them to really answer a few questions, which is, is this relevant to the business? Do you see a way that you would test and pilot the technology? Do you believe that this is the team to get it done? A lot of those things.
Yep.
So they really guide us to the top 25. And then that's where the real fun happens because we bring those founders in. So we stack that Zoom with as many of the subject matter experts that can really challenge them and ask the tough questions about latency and some of the things that have hindered us in the past of bringing technology into the production space or storytelling. And so they go through, they pitch their company. We ask them all the tough questions. They exit Zoom left. Then we rescore again. And then we have a very healthy debate. And it is very fascinating to see the similarity of innovation needs or gaps for a NASCAR versus a PGA Tour versus our golf business.
So there's so much to unpack, many golden nuggets. How did you, because it could be so daunting for a company to do what you're doing, and partnership really matters in this case. So how did you go about selecting them to then unroll the program?
So for us, we really wanted to choose a partner that was going to build something in partnership with us that was very bespoke, that allowed us to say, these are our business goals and outcomes. We want to test and pilot the technology and integrate it into the business where it makes sense. So that could be licensing, acquiring, really folding it into what we're doing. And so we needed to have our own model to help us aim at the right sort of adjacent growth areas for the business, help us find those most innovative startups from around the world. So the pace at which we can move versus the pace that entrepreneurs can move is always out of sync. And the program itself is 6 months to really test and validate it. But once we've made that investment, because we do make an equity investment, so we have skin in the game in their success, and it keeps us accountable that even beyond that 6-month calendar program, this is a portfolio investment, and we're going to continue to open doors to test as their products evolve based off of learnings from us to really find product market fit.
So I want to double click on the out of sync because this is one of the challenge of engaging startups with big companies. there is a maturity element. When is a product ready to be tested and to be deployed? How much of that is part of your selection process where you may be a bit more, how to say it, risky in taking them a bit earlier than you would, but you believe that in 6 months they could get to the point where they can deploy?
This is such a great question. And I would say our program has evolved a lot. We started in more of that traditional 3-month accelerator program, a little bit earlier stage. But we found that if we're really going to test and pilot things, there's got to be an existing product. There's got to be a little bit of traction, something to get our arms around to really test and pilot with.
Yeah.
And we could do a lot internally around proofs of concepts, but we really want to advance that to a pilot that is outwardly facing, that is our fans, our customers experiencing it, and give them that opportunity for a commercial deal. I always like to say at the end of the day, if it's important enough to the business that we're willing to pay for it, that's revenue coming in to help them build a sustainable business. They've truly found some relevant product market fit, and they'll continue to grow with us. And that de-risks our initial investment. And that's value across not just our portfolio, but this is, multiple teams, leagues, types of sports. So that gives them a real sense of we're finding market scale.
And in a way, you're bringing this go-to-market to the startups. And so I feel like in the subtitles, maybe earlier you were investing in earlier stage startups. You learned that wasn't quite that. Yeah. And now you're much more deliberate about finding when it's going to really match. Yeah. So how do you adapt this? Because you have this 6-month program. Mm-hmm. In this case, it's going to take longer. So how do you adapt or bespoke for them?
Yes. We're constantly learning and evolving that piece of it too, because while yes, in that 6-month program, the current cohort, there's a really concentrated spotlight there, but these are portfolio companies that we have to continue to invest in. And so we're constantly figuring out ways to bring their outside voices in and introduce them to parts of the business when they're ready.
So I have so many questions about the value you bring to the startups, the value you bring to the partners on top of Comcast, but let's go through the selection process. So you get to the top 50. At that point, it's just Bluetown and your team assessing them. Mm-hmm. Do you talk to them, or is it just based on the...
We do. We also, it's an opportunity to bring in a lot of summer interns as well, because to be honest, the sheer volume of 1,500 actually makes me very nervous.
Everyone would be nervous.
Because I'm always afraid there's an incredible gem in there.
Yeah.
And not everyone that applies is really, truly ready. And we nurture those relationships. And we have plenty of examples of companies that applied year 1 that were in cohort 3. And it was just that their technology and our need just finally intersected at that point. So we do a ton of just take the meeting, talk to the team, review. And some you can easily kind of dismiss as like too early. And then you have the ones that we spend so much time with all of our sports partners doing innovation discovery sessions. And so it's everything from how are they investing their time with the companies in our portfolio, because that is 100% aligned to where their business focus and need is. But then it's also what's next. So that becomes really our lens of the top 50, so that the ones that we are bringing forward are relevant.
Which I'm sure you're selling the go-to-market. Top 50, now this is probably the most challenging, but how do you go from top 50 to the top 25 that you introduce to the partners?
Yeah, I would say the top 50, it's usually we can get to like the top 100 and feel really confident. Yeah. And then that's where we have very healthy debates of going back of like, hey, in our last innovation discovery session, this is what we heard from PGA Tour. This is what we heard from our golf business. And you have to find the triangulation of this is going to have the most relevance to as many partners as possible. The way we structure the program is each company coming in gets a commercial advisor that's assigned to them at the beginning. And that's because they've raised their hand and said, I want first cut at this. This is how I'm going to test and pilot it. So we have to be like, who's got the gravitas, who's got the need, who puts the sweat equity into working with these companies. And that kind of helps us figure that piece out. So I would say I'm pretty confident by the time we're at the 100, but there's a lot of interchangeable ones, even getting to the 50.
The first interaction is when you get to the top 25, at which point they meet your top 25.
Yes.
And that's a very special moment, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you know what the partners are looking for. You've selected carefully to your top 25, which must be so hard. How do you get that first meeting right?
We do coach them on, here's the allotment of time that you have. Make sure that you're really clear on the problem that you're solving, where you can see value. I think the companies that do the best in that interview process have really been thoughtful about who they're going to bring value to. And they come with use cases or examples that are very specific to the golf industry, or very specific to motorsports, or very specific to broadcast technology that will help us amplify how we do storytelling. And this year was very interesting because we always record them because it's over 3 days. And so we brought in 3 companies that squarely fit in that space. And then it's almost a little bit of a bake-off. And that's why you want it in a contained period of time. Yep. Because sometimes you'll see one team and you're like, oh, this is amazing. And you score them. And then you see that and you're like, I didn't think that was the one that could be beat. But then a different one will rise to the top. The debate at the end where we all score before we have that debate is to try to get some of that groupthink out of the dynamic.
Yeah. Avoiding anchoring.
Yes, exactly. And it is pretty fascinating because everybody will come with a different lens of where they weight more value. And people will pick up different things.
Which is high engagement.
Very high engagement.
Now, when the pitch happens, this is the first time they know about this company, or do you have some pre-briefing?
Well, that's a great question. They'll recognize in the interview process, these are the companies that for them should have been most relevant in the top 50 that they scored. But we provide Airtable links that give them access to everything so they can preview a little bit before. A lot of times we do have videos of the teams. We've got live product demos, all of those things. So we do a little bit of a tee up beforehand, just a reminder.
I was wondering, now from the top 25 to 15?
So the top 25, that's where we do all the interviews. And I'm glad that you said 15 because in the past it was like, okay, these are our 10. We're just going to negotiate with those 10. And this time around, there were so many that it was really hard to get to the top 10. So we did have 15. And we also had in 3 areas where it was such critical need for partners. We had the one we really wanted and the one that was just like half a percentage less desired for whatever reason. And so we always knew who the replacement was if we weren't able to get across the finish line. Because as I mentioned, with more mature companies, they have boards. They need to convince them that this is an important investment for them. For the time, the $50,000 is a very nominal amount of money. It's more about the access and the business development opportunities.
I would argue that the partners pushing back on more than 10 is a true success because it means it's not that they're taking 10 because they can take 10. They actually want to go beyond that.
Exactly.
And you're bringing all this innovation to these partners and you have 4 cohorts so far. Let's talk about the entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
You've talked about a lot of things which are value added. It's obvious. Is there anything you were surprised you're bringing value to the entrepreneurs that you did not think initially?
I think actually a good example of this one is Rivalry Tech. So this was a company that had applied early on. And what they allow is to be able to, from a mobile device, order food and beverage, merchandise, have it delivered all the way to your seat. They do it for the New York Mets, Chicago White Sox, already very far in advance. They were a little bit in that, I wouldn't say early stage when they first applied, but it was more at that time period where, again, are fans going to safely be coming back in to watch? And then they were in our last cohort. And what was particularly interesting is they were then at the point where they were proving themselves in these major sporting events where you have a huge influx of people. They don't want to miss that moment. In fact, one of the founders did miss like the Series home run where the ball landed right where his seats were, but he was in line getting a hot dog with his boys.
No way.
And that was his impetus of like, never again. And so for us, we've got Wells Fargo Center, we've got PGA Tour. We have to bring more and more of that innovation for that elevated fan experience to get people going. And so this weekend at the Players Championship, they have a commercial deal with PGA Tour. You will be able to order food and have that sent to certain locations at like the 17th hole. And for us, it's really powerful because at the Players now, Comcast Business is a title sponsor of that tournament. So it's become like the innovation playground for Comcast Business. Rivalry Tech got their start in sports, but that use case is equally important in the healthcare space. You've got doctors, nurses that have a very short period of time. The last thing they want to be doing is standing in line.
Yep.
So they've had huge traction there. That's one of our most important vertical segments for Comcast Business.
So we talk about cohort. So I have two questions in a way. Does your cohort, they get to work together to get to know each other? And then across cohort, do you plan to have some kind of an alumni group?
Yes, I love this. The serendipity of what happens within the cohort. And we think about that too. We'll bring in companies where like, boy, if we combine that technology with this technology, that is going to so amplify solving. It's where the magic happens. And as intentional as you try to be about it, there are just these amazing, miraculous things that they discover that you never thought about. And then we've been doing it on a quarterly basis, and we're now going to need to move to every other month, where we have alumni roundtables. And that's where we bring everyone back together. And the format is give us an update on business. Is there any asks, any reintroduction to a sports partner or those types of things? And it's been amazing now that we're blending cohorts together that somebody will say, I've had zero traction getting to my foot in the door at DraftKings. And then you can have somebody say, oh, actually, I know the chief revenue officer really well. I'll make an introduction. And so they're opening doors for each other.
And the program sounds amazing. But is there anything when you started in 2020, with what you know today, you would have done differently?
Yes. We would have been seeking more mature companies from day one.
Okay.
If you look at cohort one, I think we were a little too anchored in, oh, we've got to find a company to invest in where their technology works in water, because we need to bring value to USA Swimming.
Yeah.
And I think it was just a little bit, it closed the aperture too much. We needed to be thinking much more broadly. So I think that has helped us.
So we're at GCV Monterey. Everyone talks about financial value, strategic value. But here I think that the strategic value is so strong. Mm-hmm. It moves the needle for your partners, for Comcast. You will get the financial value because the help you provide to the startups just means you're going to do well. Is there any tips you would tell the audience about how to think about strategic value when you have this kind of engagements with startups? Because I feel like you probably have a few golden nuggets about strategic value will bring financial value, both to the mothership as well as your own equity investments.
Yeah. Well, it might be helpful just to give a lay of the land of Comcast, because we have Comcast Ventures, which has evolved as more of a strategic investment and really laddering up to the cable side of our business and finding those adjacent growth areas. And then we have another program called Lift Labs, and they're actually a 4-week model. They are stage agnostic. They do not make an investment, but it's really anchored around a really timely trend. So obviously AI. And so when you look at that as like a portfolio of programs where we are finding, aiming, and bringing those outside voices in, I think it does help us hit a lot of those different sectors on both the strategic and the financial return side.
So how much do you work with Comcast Ventures?
So I actually report into Alice Goldberg, who is our managing director of Comcast Ventures. So hand in hand. Yeah. And it is very much, I like to think of it as it's almost like a product portfolio. It's an innovation portfolio. We've got to have different programs and investment vehicles to find the right companies that we need to be working with.
So why would a company similar to Comcast in a different geography not have a program like yours?
In all seriousness, you look at like an NBA launchpad.
Yep.
That is such a similar ethos and investment strategy that we have. Theirs is very deep on making sure that their sport is the worldwide innovator for their fans. We're doing that across multiple sports, but it's amazing to see with no intentionality. And Venue in our cohort, one was in their last cohort. And so I think it naturally lends itself to sport, but I think if you pick any sector, energy, health tech, some of these other ones, I think this is a model that can really scale.
Very nice. And it's a good segue to my last question, which is, what are you excited about next? Where would you want to invest and introduce to the partners?
Yes, I think I'm always looking for the technology that can bring something unique in the living room that makes you also have a little bit of FOMO of, wait a minute, I'm missing something in the stadium. I love anything that brings data into the storytelling. And that can, for me, around like predictive analytics, that's powerful, certainly from a betting standpoint, but it's also powerful in the living room of, oh my gosh, something amazing is about to happen. Shouldn't you pick up your voice remote and say big moments and have it take you right to that moment because you want to see it live, all of those things.
I feel like you have crafted the dream job.
I had the best job in the company. Yes, thank you. I get to be right there at that intersection of technology and sports and just work with these incredibly brilliant entrepreneurs. So yes, dream job.
Jenna, it was wonderful to have you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. This was a pleasure.
Thank you.